If there's one thing that's been a mainstay in the Transformers franchise, it's the concepts of remold/retooling. It's something that can prove to be a creative process or a downright lazy one. Some characters may share similar features to others, but their standout personalities easily make you forget that they were even molded in another bot's image. But occasionally, there are those robots who simply are reused as nothing more than a stand-in. What's up guys, my name is RBG and welcome to another Transformers Top 10 video. This is something where we take the best and worst elements of the live action films and comprise them into the top 10 rankings. For today's video, I wanted to present a list of the most retooled robots in the live action TF universe, because if we're going to be honest, there have been a lot of them. Whether it be reused bodies or robots that have simply been recolored. As mentioned earlier, retooling is nothing new when it comes to Transformers. It's been a thing since the Generation 1 era where we see our favorite characters share similar sculpts with a newer addition to the roster. Essentially what retooling is creating a new version of a pre-existing Transformer toy by adding or removing parts or downright resculpting them completely. It's a word that's often confused with a more negative connotation called remolding, but it's always been a common practice. It's also something that Michael Bay is all too familiar with when it comes to his films. Now, in the first 07 movie, it seemed like he and the design team would go out of their way to come up with distinctly different concepts for each robot. But over the years, he would resort to refurbishing parts for additional characters in sequels. But without further ado, let's jump into this top 10 list of all the knockoffs. Number 10, Topspin. Is it just me, or does Michael Bay have something against blue robots? We had to watch a second wave Autobot named Jolt literally go by unnoticed because he was mute throughout the entirety of TF2. And in TF3, we got an equally solid robot in the form of Topspin. This was downright weird because the Wreckers are known for their boisterous personalities. In the films, there were these loudmouth warriors who jumped in any mission no matter how dangerous they were. Something that makes them stand out amongst the other Autobots is their blatant redneck stereotype design. To play up their NASCAR alt modes, Topspin and his wrecker buddies were given sunglasses and mullets made of crash webbing to resemble the NASCAR fanbase. It was a pretty creative design choice. Unfortunately, Topspin never uttered a single word and we wouldn't see him for another 6 years. He would make another brief appearance in Transformers The Last Night, except we weren't quite sure if this robot was even him or a different character altogether, because instead of having his own head, it's been switched out with one that resembles Leadfoot, mainly his metallic beard. What makes this retool even more confusing is the fact that the character isn't even credited as Topspin. Since he's a robot refugee who loves playing volleyball, he's simply labeled as Volleybot. Coming in at number 9 is Barricade. One of the most reoccurring Decepticons in the live-action universe, Barricade has seen his fair share of alterations. No matter how many times we think he's out, Michael Bay manages to throw him back into the continuous Cybertronian war. Originally, and rightfully so, he was going to be the Autobot Prowl, who's known for having a police car alt mode, but Bay and the writers thought it would be a better idea to flip the script by making the military and police vehicles the bad guys. Something that I always hated about the Decepticons in the first 3 films was how spiky their designs were. I mean, I get the idea of making them look more menacing as opposed to the more friendly aesthetic the Autobots sported, but they made the Decepticons look like balled up foil paper. Thankfully, Barricade was more visually pleasing and distinctive from the rest of the Decepticon horde. Not only does his robot mold sport different colors thanks to the police car parts, but his skeletal system looks unique. I would say it looks so unique to the point that fans confuse him with another bot in Transformers Revenge of the Fallen. Except he wouldn't be seen in another sequel until Transformers Dark of the Moon. A common misconception amongst those who aren't that heavily invested into the films is that he was cut in half by Sideswipe at the beginning of TF2, but that robot was actually a second wave Decepticon known as Sideways. Now admittedly, I thought this was Barricade too. I mean, the two robots have damn near the same endoskeleton despite having different alt modes. They even share the same head molds. Before Barricade was seen in TF3, I always assumed that he was hiding in Shanghai, China during part 2. As a matter of fact, the TF comic book writer Chris Mowry was originally going to depict Barricade transforming into Sideways, but Hasbro completely rejected that idea, which was probably for the best, because if he got killed off in TF2, we wouldn't have seen him make a return in TF5 with this badass redesign. Landing at the number 8 spot is Blackout. They say making a good first impression is important, and I think it's safe to say that Blackout did that and then some. The silent giant undoubtedly set the tone of the first film and reassured us that we were going to be in for one hell of a ride. He was the first robot we'd see take action and completely wreak havoc on the military. I vividly remember sitting in the theater and being blown away as each individual part in his helicopter alt mode flipped and shifted as he transformed. And I even appreciated the awesome reference to the G1 transforming sound effect. This was just an all-around cool looking Transformer. Something I really liked is how his actions played up his name. During his epic hailstorm of firepower, he aimed his energy wave cannon to the ground to create a massive shockwave. The guy really made an impact. Shortly after arriving in Mission City, he tried to block off Sound's path so he wouldn't escape with the Allspark, but he was attacked by Ironhide. He made quite a bit of noise during the big battle, but unfortunately the same military group he harassed earlier in the movie would get their revenge by pounding him with F-22 missiles and a special parting gift from Linux. So we thought that would be the last we would see of him, until a very similar robot was seen during an epic 3-on-1 battle in Transformers Revenge of the Fallen, and this has got to be the most confusing instance of a remold. People instantly mistook Blackout for Grindor, and this is something that stems all the way down to the film's production company DreamWorks themselves. The company stated that there wasn't even a character in the Revenge of the Fallen film named Grindor because it was indeed Blackout. The film never explicitly establishes Grindor as a separate character from Blackout. Roberto Orsi, one of the film's screenwriters, mentioned that he wasn't even sure whether they were supposed to be the same character or not. It took Hasbro to confirm that the helicopter lookalike was indeed Grindor and not Blackout. Now, what I will say is that despite their glaring similarities, there are a few key differences. For one, their alt modes feature different helicopter models, and while Blackout stands at a staggering 33 feet tall, Grindor completely dwarfs him, coming in at 55 feet. Number 7. Demolisher. Now this one is going to be pretty quick since the character was killed off at the beginning of TF2, but Demolisher is one of the first giants to grace the silver screen in the Bayverse. He was the most prominently featured Transformer in all the trailers, even though he received a pathetically short amount of screen time. Now what's funny about this Decepticon unicycle is the fact that he has a doppelganger who appears later on in the movie. For the longest time, he's been thought to be a Constructicon named Scavenger, a robot who's basically a recolor. Despite Demolisher being mostly white with red stripes and Scavenger being mostly red, they were practically identical. And that seems like an easy way to identify both bots. But people still confused them, and Hasbro and Paramount didn't help matters. As a matter of fact, they made things even more confusing, because even though Demolisher was the white bot in the movies, they would still use Scavenger's model color in the movie tie-in games and comics. I don't know if I should label Demolisher and Scavenger walking contradictions or rolling ones. Number 6. Bumblebee. If you made it to this point of the video, then you probably realized that Michael Bay has egregiously reused assets and tried to act like they were original concepts. But over time, this practice would be used as a plot element in one of the later movies, and that's Transformers Age of Extinction. By this time, the Kinetic Solutions Incorporated, better known as KSI, were salvaging parts from dead Transformers and rebuilding them as remote-controlled knockoffs. Among the drones was Stinger, a robot who was deliberately designed to look like Bumblebee and was said to be the improved version out of the two, referring to Bee's design as flawed. After hearing this, the Beaster himself let out his frustration by kicking over the ripoff's prototype. And I understood his anger, but I thought it was very hypocritical of Bee to basically copy Stinger's design after he scans a 2014 Camaro. It's like he became a knockoff of a knockoff. But then again, it was most likely a way for the movie's editors to save some time. Anyways, before the leaked lookalike was confirmed to be Stinger, many fans believed him to be Cliffjumper, which is understandable since the character has become synonymous with Bumblebee in the fact that they share the same body molds, and he's red. Since we're on the topic of Cliffjumper, I think it's only fair that I mention that he did appear in Bumblebee's movie, and in traditional Transformers fashion, he shares the same body type as Bee. Some things never change. Arriving at number 5 is the Protoforms. Now, Protoforms are nothing new to the game. They've been a thing since the Beast Wars era. During their inception, they were considered the first stage in a Transformer's life cycle. In the case of the live-action continuity, they're the base form, or in layman's terms, the skeletal system that exists inside each Cybertronian. Michael Bay literally added an extra layer of creativity by making it where the Protoforms would travel in exopods, an exostructure that serves as protection and is capable of interstellar travel. After the robots land on a new world, they uncoil from their protective pod, transform back into a protoform, and immediately go into trans-scanning mode. It's like watching your favorite Transformer run around completely nude. But anyways, let's not beat around the bush here. Protoforms are some of the most reused models in the TF movies. In the first movie, all of the Autobot Protoforms literally look like Optimus Prime, except they are different heights. I find it weird that the movie tie-in comics made every character distinctly different while they were in their protoforms. They even took creative liberties to make them consistent with the movie designs by giving all of the Autobots toes. But this was just a minor issue. It wouldn't get completely out of hand until the second film, except instead of having an overabundance of Autobot protoforms, we now have Decepticons. And Michael Bay doubled up on the remolds. During the big battle in Egypt, the Fallen calls for backup. After arriving, the Decepticons remain in their protoforms and are used as cannon fodder, and I didn't think it would get any worse, but they managed to double up on the duplicates even more in Dark of the Moon. By the power of plot convenience and a space bridge, these bastards were seen hiding on the moon and came to Earth to raise hell. Fast forward a few years later and we see the same models under the command of Quintessa in TF5. If that ain't blatant repurposing, I don't know what is. Coming in at number 4 is the Knights. These guys are the retools that make sense out of everyone on this list. Since they're Knights, they're obviously going to feature similar armor pieces and body types. Something that's always been an inconsistent factor is the exact number of these guys, because as it says in their origin there was a total of 12 Knights, but throughout the film you notice that there's more than that number. I'm not sure if there's a certain hierarchy that make up the original 12 and some of the Knights are low ranking or what. Until this day, none of the Knights are named in the films like they are on the toy boxes, so fans are left with the chore of assuming who they are based on the facial similarities from the toy counterparts. The Knights that I got confused the most was Dragonius and the Talisman Knight. This guy was advertised a lot during the marketing campaign for TF5 and I thought he looked the most badass. I always thought he could be an ancestor to Optimus Prime since they share similar builds and he has a mouth guard. But the Talisman Knight also looks like he could be given a paternity test on the Mori show to determine if he's Optimus's father, because he also sports a mouth guard. Despite the two having their own distinct colors, they damn near look identical. I wouldn't have made the assumption that the two were one and the same if the toys hadn't come out months before the film was released, because as I mentioned earlier, fans were forced to make these assumptions because the names were never said in the film. Not to mention that there are only 5 names available out of all the 12 members. Now it's important to note that Dragonicus couldn't be the Talisman Knight since he was seen joining Optimus near the end of the film after his doppelganger had died hours earlier. So ultimately you'd have to use the 5 names to label the Knights in separate classes if they had similar models. This was made apparent where we see yet another Dragonicus clone get killed by Optimus only to show up and help him at the end of the movie as mentioned earlier. Eyeing down the number 3 spot is Shockwave. They say the eyes are the key to a person's soul, but obviously that philosophy doesn't apply to our cycloptic friend here, because he's a soulless scientist that no one can read. Not even his fellow Decepticons know what goes on in that twisted mind of his. And I think it's all due to his design being so cold and emotionless. This has been a signature trait since his early days in the G1 series, and for the most part the live action movies nailed that aspect of the character. I mean, yeah, the mouth mandibles are a slight deviation from the original carnation, but he's still the unreadable killing machine he's always been. I even like how they changed his trademark yellow eye into a red one. With that said, I do feel like the red-eyed Cyclops design should have been exclusively made for this character, but as we all know, it didn't take that long for the novelty to wear thin. By the time Transformers Age of Extinction rolled around, there were several robots sporting the one-eyed look. Similar to Bumblebee, KSI used certain parts to recreate their own version of Shockwave. Considering the fact that he died during the big battle in Chicago, I wouldn't be surprised if KSI used his actual parts to create the drones. Instead of making a direct copy of the evil Decepticon Watchmen, they literally doubled up by creating them with 2 heads. They also switched out the arm cannon for 2 blades. One of the 2-headed drones was seen fighting Hound, where he pinned him down to the ground but was destroyed when Hound shot both heads with a single shot from his cigar. And we thought this would be the end of the one-eyed trend, but good old Bay just couldn't let our boy rest in peace. By the time we got to TF the last night, a recolored version of Shockwave's head was placed on a refurbished KSI drone's body, ultimately creating the loudmouth, trash-talking, and strutting Nitro Zeus.
I know where you live, Enrique. Say hello to your wife for me.
Number 2, Longhaul. Can we have a thick bot appreciation day, because these guys are always putting their lives on the line for our sadistic satisfaction. Over the years we've seen their bodies get retooled and brought back to life just to be torn down again, and Longhaul is a prime example of this. Since his live action debut in TF2, the Constructicon heavyweight has shared his thick physique with at least 3 different robots. Him and his Constructicon bros will sneak on board a freighter to resurrect their leader Megatron. Sometime later, Longhaul and another Constructicon with the same body type were present during Operation Firestorm in Egypt. And here's where things get confusing. The Longhaul lookalike is the one who combines with the other Constructicons to form Devastator, and not Longhaul himself. The reason why I know this isn't the same Longhaul we saw at the beginning of the movie is because the other truck has L250 labeled on the front and on the bucket, and the real one doesn't. While Devastator is dragging his nuts up a pyramid, the real Longhaul can be seen shooting at Nest forces in a small town near the Great Ruins. He's eventually destroyed during an airstrike, but another lookalike is seen during the Battle of Chicago, where he gets downright wrecked by Optimus during a Decepticon kill streak. You also see a Longhaul clone taking on the form of a garbage truck. Fast forward to the last night and we got 2 new robots rocking the Longhaul body type. The first one being Canopy and the second one being Onslaught.
I got the last!
his fat head.
Clocking in at number 1 is Starscream. This entry is going to be a little different from the others because it goes all the way back to its G1 roots. As mentioned earlier, retooling has always been a thing that's helped create some interesting characters. One of the original byproducts of this concept would have to be the Seekers, a group of jet troopers who possess superior tracking and detecting skills and a high level of firepower. The quote-unquote word seeker hovered a long time in a strange gray area between the official and fan coin terms. In 2002, it would become an official term where it was used in the Dreamwave Transformers comic titled War Within. We'd see the likes of Starscream, Skywarp, and Thundercracker make multiple appearances throughout the different iterations of the TF lore. But when it came to the live-action films, the idea of having a dedicated group of jet retools was pretty much non-existent. There was only one jet head honcho, and that was Starscream. It wouldn't be until 11 years later where our savior, Travis Knight, would deliver what the fans have been asking for since the very beginning: Seekers who look like the ones we grew up watching in the G1 series. After we got the first trailer for Bumblebee, we were jumping for joy seeing our boy Starscream in his G1 greatness, only to be let down when Knight revealed that it was Blitzwing.
I'm going to break a few hearts here today. It is not Starscream. I know.
After seeing the movies, we were thrilled to see all of the Seekers, including Starscream, and their classic designs in that big epic battle on Cybertron. This was retooling done right and with actual purpose. It was done with the intentions of keeping things faithful to the original source material. Even though we didn't necessarily hear Starscream and the Seekers talk, let alone see much of them, it showed that Paramount cared and that the art of retooling can be done right if in the right hands. Anyways guys, I've been thinking of making this video for a while and I just had to get it out to you. What do you think about my list? Do you agree with me? Is there anyone else that I may have missed? Let me know down in the comments below. If you made it to this point of the video, I'd like for you to follow your comment up with hashtag copy.